welcome to everybody. District Governor Lyle, the PDGs, fellow Rotarians, what another awesome afternoon we're gonna have. Katrina didn't let us down last time, and she's sure, based on what the little I saw tonight, I think we're on our edge, we're on the edge. So strategic planning is a cornerstone of any proper business. Rotary is that business. So fellow Rotarians, this is your opportunity to pick up those golden nuggets. Use them in your training and in your planning so that as we get to our year, your year is off to a great start and you have the buy-in of the members of your club. I urge you to encourage your members to come back onto the website and look at the sessions that have passed, and for you to encourage your fellow PEs and incoming board members of other clubs in your area to join these sessions. Every time that you come, there is something to be learned and something to take away. So the sessions are recorded and placed on the district website. The PowerPoint presentations are also there for you to peruse, so I urge you to go back to them. These are moments of learning. These are moments of expanding your reach. So I ask that you take in these sessions as well and as thoroughly as you can. This afternoon will prove to be no different from any other. And this is session 7. We're almost at the halfway point. So sit back and let's have a good time this evening. Lots of questions, I'm sure will come out of this one as well. Thank you very much. Enjoy the session.
Good evening, everyone. All protocols observed. Past Assistant Governor and past District Secretary Katrina is a member of the Rotary Club of Barbados South. She joined the club in 2003 and was among the first females inducted into Rotary in Barbados. In 2009, Katrina became the first female president of a Rotary club in Barbados. Over her Rotary life, Katrina has served in several club officers' roles, including club secretary. At the district level, Katrina has served as assistant governor from 2012 to 2014 and district secretary 2015 to 2016. Katrina is passionate about youth programs and youth service in Rotary, having been a past member of both the Interact and she has been involved in coordinating RILA, selecting ambassadorial scholars, and selecting and preparing group study exchange candidates in the past. Katrina is an experienced human resources management professional with a demonstrated history of working in the financial services industry. She is a strong professional, skilled in performance improvement, coaching, compensation, organizational design, and business transformation. Katrina is a graduate of the Cambrini University in Pennsylvania, USA, and holds a Bachelor of Science honors in Human Resource Management and Business Administration. She also holds an MBA with a concentration in Global Management. Throughout her 20-year experience of providing advisory services to clients in the region, Katrina has assisted several organizations in strategy development and execution. Let us give Katrina a hearty welcome.
Thank you very much, Rotarian Cheryl Ann. And I feel, I was going to say no pressure, but I feel a little pressured. So I'll try to do my best. We do have a very heavy topic ahead of us, but I am delighted to have the opportunity to have another discussion with you this evening on the topic of strategic planning, a very important topic, as our district governor-elect has said. So I'm going to share my screen. I learned from the last time. I think we're ready to go. So again, warm welcome, and I'm really looking forward to today's session. Strategic planning has its origins in the military and has been in the business world for decades, from as far back as the end of the Second World War, and no doubt will be around for many more decades, even if just modified slightly. As it relates to planning as individuals, let's see if I can clear my screen there a little. As it relates to planning as individuals, I think we've heard varied pieces of advice throughout the course of our lives. And perhaps in these uncertain times, the nugget of advice which may be resonating with us these days is that you can't go back to change the past, but you can ruin the present by focusing too much on the future. I'm hoping that by the end of today's session, that I encourage you to apply this piece of advice very selectively and convince you that it has no place in the management of our Rotary clubs. For discussion this evening, we're going to cover why do you develop a 5-year plan? We're going to review the strategic planning process and discuss how to actually develop a strategic plan for your club. And as usual, we'll close the session by addressing some of your questions. But just to get us started, it's Monday, which is brighter than the Friday that we last met, or the Thursday. But I still want to get you warmed up. I want to get a little bit of idea who we have in the room, personality types, and what we're working with in terms of clubs. So like the last session that I delivered, we're going to start with a poll, 4-question poll, 2 questions related to your club and 2 questions about you. So I'm going to ask you to scan the QR code on the screen that you see, or you can go ahead and enter the 4-digit code if you have already downloaded the app. You will need a second device, unfortunately, so you're not going to be able to do it on the laptop that you're actually viewing the presentation on or connection on. So let's get your phones out and let's scan this QR code or enter the 4-digit PIN just to do a short quiz just to get us warmed up. So I'm going to go to that quiz now. Just going to give you some time. Wow. Quick. Share my screen so you can see the results. So the first question asks, how many years does your club's strategic plan span? We'll see what the answer is coming out. Most favorable. So far, it looks like 3 years. Okay, most people have a 3-year plan. 16 responses so far. All right, 3 years, tied with no plan at all. So there are I think 110 Rotarians on this call. I think when I last looked at the numbers, 128. Let's see how many if we can get to 30. Okay. That's 30. Okay. So far, lead-in or responses, it's been a 3-year plan, 40%, and no plan follows that at 30%. So clubs either have a 3-year plan, a few, 18% of the respondents, a 5-year plan. So most clubs, most respondents have a 3-year plan, which is good. Let's see the next question. And you're ahead of me. So in 2 words or less, why do most clubs fail to develop a strategic plan? So the answers that are most frequently being reported: failure to plan, no time, lack of vision, excellent response rate, and I think very accurate responses. No time, yes. Lack of know-how, excellent. I agree. No planning continuity, priorities, lack of guidance, no understanding, poor planning in French, difficult, lazy, member retention, all I think possible responses, good responses. So do you know where you want to be in the next 5 years was the next question. So 95% of the respondents know where they want to be, but do you have a plan to get you there? So 78% of the respondents have a plan to get you there, as compared to about 40% of our clubs who have actual plans, 40 plus the 17 who had the 3-year. So we still, at a personal level, understand the need to plan and are planning. We have plans, but we're not necessarily translating that to the management of our clubs. So hopefully after our session today, we will see the error of our ways and some light into why we need to plan as Rotary clubs going forward to be successful in delivering on our mission as Rotarians and Rotary clubs. So let me now go back to our presentation and let's get started. Thank you very much for indulging me, and I hope that warmed you up a little bit, and we are now ready to get started on our presentation for this evening. So why do we want to develop a 5-year plan? That's the big question. Do we need a 5-year plan? And strategic planning has long been considered the key to achieving big goals, and most business gurus of any note will say that if we have a 5-year plan, we're significantly increasing our chances to reach the organizational goals that we set for ourselves, because 5 years helps us to clarify our goals, to ensure that we have specific goals that are measurable, and to confirm that they're the goals that we really want. The sweet spot for strategic planning has always been 3 to 5 years. But if the last year has taught us anything, it's that rather than focusing on what results will be achieved at the end of a 5-year timeline, many organizations now are focusing on the direction and working towards that direction by adopting short-term initiatives. So it's my view that the approach that we have seen in the last few years, and certainly in the last year, doesn't negate the need for long-term strategic planning, but it just steers us in a direction that provides for a shorter window, or maybe of 3 years rather than 5. And the reality is that, if we have 5, imagine if you started out with a 5-year plan or 2 years ago probably is obsolete given what we've experienced in the last 2 years. So I think in the uncertain times that we've experienced in the last year and a half or so, it underscores the need for planning, but it also suggests that we need to plan in a way that we're able to anticipate the change and position ourselves appropriately. We really need to have clear plans that allow us to rapidly achieve our goals and to keep pace with the changing world around us. Why do most service organizations and service clubs not have a 5-year plan or even a 3-year plan for that matter? And a lot of what I have on the screen, you noted in your word cloud response, some of the reasons why most nonprofit organizations don't have a strategic plan is lack of expertise. Few clubs have members trained in strategic planning, and sometimes it's lack of, just knowing where to start. It's just an inability to get started, failing to get started because you don't know where to start. You don't have enough exposure and planning activities, or perhaps it's those uncontrollable, often intangible variables. We did this before and it didn't go so well. So the variables that complicate planning, which can discourage a club from repeating an exercise, especially if they've undertaken it and it's not done well, or that we're focused on the daily operations of the club, with the board and its members are so busy with the day-to-day operations, and there is a belief that there's no time for planning. And I saw that coming out in the responses that we did to the question a few minutes ago. And a big one that we see all of the time in business as well as in service clubs like our own is a failure to realize the importance of strategic planning. Most clubs never do strategic planning and continue to exist. That's the truth. And sometimes that provides them with sufficient reason to disregard strategic planning. But as we prepare to take on the various leadership roles in our clubs in the next year or so, I think we really need to take a close look at ourselves and the leadership style that we will model. Most of us who are past presidents will admit to, going through a year as a Rotary president, feeling like if you're trapped sometimes in a Mario Brothers game, you're elected as president, now what? You need to quickly decide who's on the board. You got to build the club program for the year, and before you know it, it's time for the handover ceremony. And most of us tell ourselves, okay, well, we just need to start strong. And we go through that night and the first few meetings, and before we blink twice, the district governor is visiting in a few weeks. And we got to get the directors ready. We got to get the club activities together, right? And it really is a crazy place to be. At several points of our journey, in our heads, we're screaming for someone to help us, please. Some of us not so silently, some of us very silently. But by the time we, overcome a few more challenges, oh, look, it's December and we just have half a year to go. Just hold on for another few months before we reach our goals. And really, I think it really does not need to be this way. We have a wonderful organization that we are part of. And Rotary International provides us with lots of tools to help us to really plan effectively, both for short-term and long-term planning. I think we're one of the few organizations where, we know who's going to be president 2 years ahead of time, and therefore we have ample space and time for effective planning and execution. So I'm willing to concede that perhaps 5-year plans are not needed by all clubs, but at least we need to have 3-year plans to help us focus on who we're going to serve and how we're going to serve them. And that, I think, is the core of why we need a multi-year strategic plan. Okay, so I'm cognizant of the diversity of generations and generation groups that we have in our session this evening. When I was preparing my slides over the weekend, my daughter cautioned me against using the Mario Brothers game analogy that I just had displayed. So I've instead decided that I'm going to use an analogy that we can all relate to, which is the good old board game like Monopoly. So this evening, we're going to play the strategy board game. All right, so get ready to choose your pieces, scope out the board. We're going to set up the bank, get ourselves ready for our board game, just like we do in real life when we're going to have a family night, games night of Monopoly. All right, the rules of this game are similar. I'm going to go over the rules just like we do at the start of all of our Monopoly games as soon as I leave this slide up for the benefit of our French-speaking colleagues for 2 seconds. So here are the rules of our game, okay? The strategic planning process that I'm going to discuss tonight has 4 major steps or phases. The first phase, we're going to determine the status of our clubs. How is the club really doing? In the second phase, we're going to need you to develop a vision. What do you want the club to be like? In the third phase, we're going to need a plan. How are you going to achieve your vision? How are you going to achieve the purpose that you've set out as your club's purpose? And the fourth and final phase is that we're going to track our progress. How close are you to meeting your goals? And do you need to course correct? Do you need to tweak as we go along? Rotarians, the evidence is indisputable. Clubs that develop and follow a strategic plan are stronger, period. End of story. So the onus is on us as leaders and future leaders in Rotary to ensure that our clubs have a strategic plan in place for the next few years going forward. So having set the rules, let's go. All right, so like every games night, we hear the rules. The next thing we do is that we choose our team. The first step in our strategy board game is selecting a strategy planning team. Okay. We want to make sure that we assemble a team made up of the past, present, and future or incoming leaders to help develop the club's strategic plan. You want to make sure that you maybe ask a non-Rotarian, maybe a Rotaractor or a club member that is not in a leadership position to help facilitate the strategic planning meetings. You want to get a variety of perspectives by involving club members who have diverse backgrounds and experiences. And you want to try to align your club's strategy and goals to reflect those of the district strategy and those of Rotary International. With your team in place, you're going to move 2 steps forward because leaders cannot develop a plan by themselves. So it's going to be very important that you have others working with you to develop your strategy. Once you have a team, I think you have a head start. So we move 2 steps forward. And the next activity that we're going to undertake and the first step in phase 1 is to determine the status of your club. How is your club doing? We want to do what I call a health check of your club. And when I say health check, I mean a full health check, comprehensive medical on your club. And this is best done by surveying your members. Actually, Rotary International actually has a great club health check survey that we can all adapt or adopt directly or tweak it. We want to get into the head of our club. We want to understand, is our club limping? Is our club in need of resuscitation? Is it under stretcher? What is really the status of our club? Or is our club just going along fine, heart perfect, ready to go, members engaged. What is the status of your club? And this is really very important and an important first step to do a health check. All clubs are at different levels of wellness, and honestly assessing where your club is on the spectrum is really a good start to your ability to assess our club. Once we have done our health check, what we really want to get to is some real serious discussion about the club's SWOT. And I've been told by our translators that this is what the acronym spells in French. So what is a SWOT? And I think everybody on this call, I would hazard a guess, have heard of SWOT and the SWOT analysis before. And basically, in conducting a SWOT, what we're looking at are the strengths, weaknesses, the threats and the opportunities and the threats to our club. Strengths are positives, which are typically internal factors. The planning team can draw the club's strengths and the feedback generated from its members. So in your health check, in the survey that you've done, if you administer a survey to get the club's members on the health of your club, or just solicit feedback, you can identify some of the strengths from your club. Similarly, weaknesses, though negatives, are internal factors that you can also get from looking at the feedback and analyzing the feedback you have from your members. Opportunities are positives, but these are typically external factors, external to the club. And you can identify these by, meeting with other community leaders or key external stakeholders. Similarly, threats are negatives, but they're external to the clubs. And again, like opportunities, you can identify your strengths, your threats, by talking to others outside of the club. You want to understand, what are some of the areas, what are some of the threats, what are some of the menaces that we need to understand as an organization. So in terms of what does that actually translate to in terms of strengths, when you're doing your SWOT analysis, you want to list what the club does well. In terms of weaknesses, you want to list what the club can improve. And opportunities, what are some of the opportunities in the community that the club can act on? Maybe there's a growing demographic group that we can draw more members from. What are those opportunities out there that we can really act on? And the threats, what are the list of challenges that our communities are facing that the club can help address? So these are just some examples of what you can list and take into account when doing your SWOT analysis. So having done your health check and gotten feedback from your members and your club SWOT, we can now start to identify some of the strategic issues that the club needs to address. And strategic issues are those critical unknowns that really are driving us to embark on the strategic planning process. These are the issues that we're looking for a solution for or a decision on. So some of the issues that we may want to address in a strategic plan may include things like, how will I increase our membership and engage members of our club? How will I attract a diverse group of members? How do I include more community members in our activities? So we need to identify what are our strategic issues, what are we trying, looking for solutions for, what are the decisions that we need to make. Again, having done our health check or SWOT analysis and identified our strategic issues, now we've completed phase 1. We're firmly on our way, having passed the first few obstacles of developing a strategic plan, not knowing where to start. We have a start, we have some information, and we're going to turn the first corner. If we were playing Monopoly, we may now be heading for the valuable real estate. So the next step is to agree a vision for the club or to create a purpose statement. What is it we want our clubs to be like? How will we be different from the other service clubs and civil society groups. We want to write this down and we want to refine our statement. We want to share it and refine it. We can share it with members, we can solicit input from others, but to help create our vision statement, you can start by listing maybe 5 to 7 characteristics that you want your club to have. What do you want the club to have within the next 3 to 5 years that will help you realize this vision? For example, do you want the club to be a fun club, innovation? Do you want it to be more representative of the community, etc.? We can answer ourselves questions like, what will our club look like in 3 to 5 years? And how will we know that we've succeeded? And what is it we want to achieve? I want to remind you before I go on to the next slide, I should say that a vision statement really defines your desired future state, and it provides a direction for what you want your club to be. So we're not aiming for a long, exhaustive statement. What we're looking for in a vision statement or purpose statement is that you are using a 1-sentence vision statement with your strategic plan and team. You're coming up with a 1-sentence that perhaps using the list of characteristics kind of define what is your vision for the club? What do you want your club to be like? And I want to stress, I said it before, but I want to stress the importance of sharing your vision statement or your purpose statement with your members to get some input to help you refine the statement. So fellow Rotarians, thus far, at this stage of the game, I think, having gone through the initial activities, we've done a thorough examination and documented our current state. We've answered those questions. How well are we doing? What could we improve? What are some of the opportunities? What are some of the challenges? We just talked about creating a vision for our club, which we could describe, of course, as our future state. So we're asking and answering, what would you rather do in the future? What is it the club will look like in 3 years from now or 5 years from now? And what, like most organizations, you will find is that we are not where we want to be in 3 years or 5 years from now. There is a gap. And that gap represents what I like to call as our change agenda. It represents the opportunity to change. So to transition from where we are now, our current state, to where we want to be in the future is our change agenda. What is it we need to change or do differently to close our gaps? So put differently, this is the bridge that will take our club to the future, the vision that we all want and put out there as our club's vision. In the third phase of our strategic planning process, what we want to do is determine how are we going to realize our vision. It's really great to have a lofty statement that says in 5 years our club will. But what is that? How does that translate into actual initiatives and activities? What are the objectives that we're going to put in place and that we're going to achieve to ensure that we achieve our vision? We need to ask ourselves as we transition from the current state to the future state, what do we need to do? What are the objectives we need to develop? We will need to develop strategic objectives for X, okay? So the next step is developing your strategic objectives once you know what your vision are. And these strategic objectives or priorities is how we will succeed and what we must develop to make sure that we achieve our vision. we want to list our annual goals along with the actions that we will need to undertake. We want to note the resources that we need and who will lead the effort to meet each goal. So effective goals that we're set in our objectives must clearly state what, who, how, when, and how they will be measured. And then we must set a timeline for the achievement of each objectives. And I mean, this sounds all very theoretical, but we definitely need to get practical. We've done things correct so far if we follow this process, in theory, but I will warn you that it perhaps is simpler said than done. So how do we actually get all of these ideas and these objectives that I'm suggesting that you create done? And one of the tips that I'm going to share with you now is that in terms of developing your strategic objectives, that I would encourage you to follow a really tried and tested formula, and that strategic objectives are typically constructed where, we have a verb, the objective contains an adjective and a noun. And I'm going to show you an actual example a few slides down of what I'm talking about in terms of using a simple construct to document what your objectives are. So at this point, we have a lot of good material. We have objectives written down. Now what? Do we have too many objectives, or better yet, how do these objectives all align with each other? To help us organize and align the objectives that we are going to introduce for our club, I'm going to discuss the final strategic planning concept for the evening. And that's a practical tool that I use personally in my day-to-day business planning. And that is a practical tool that will help you actually develop what is called a strategy map. I personally find using the balanced scorecard framework, and I'm sure several people on the call have heard about the balanced scorecard framework, very useful in creating a strategy map. And using the balanced scorecard approach, we can create a strategy map in 4 quadrants. And those quadrants typically are the financial quadrant. So if we succeed, how would we look to our stakeholders, our clients and our customer quadrant? What do our clients expect from us? Our service quadrant, how are we going to satisfy our clients? What processes or projects are we going to excel in? And of course, our people and culture, or members, the look and feel of our clubs. To be successful, our clubs must learn and improve how to engage members and potential members. So these are the 4 quadrants that we're going to develop and put the strategic objectives that we are developing. We're going to try to create a strategy map, link them all together, and make sure that they are interrelated and aligned. So this is what a blank strategy map looks like. So you see the 4 quadrants. The top 2, financial and customer, looks at what we're getting. The bottom 2 in terms of service and clients, and culture. What are we going to do to get us to what we want to be? Here's one that I kind of nipped from the internet, borrowed from the internet. And this is an example of an actual small business. And this is a healthy eating snack bar. And you can see that in developing their strategy map, they've completed all 4 quadrants, and they have been able to link their objectives together. It doesn't make sense developing objectives and that they're so far apart, they're not related. You're going to burn a lot of energy and not, deliver the value that you can if your objectives are linked. So there's a cause and effect, and they are interrelated. So this is an actual example, and you will see what this organization has indicated in terms of their strategy. And using the same example, here is strategic objectives using the framework that I introduced earlier. So this particular organization, as I said, is a fruit stand, and at present they serve a daily special of a single fruit. In the future, they want to have a diverse mix of organic and local fruits. So obviously they want to have a product change. So what is their strategic objectives? The verb is partner with adjective is local organic, and the noun is produce supplier. So their strategic objective is partner with a local and organic produce suppliers. And in French, the same example. And just bringing it a little close to our reality, here is an actual example of a strategic objective from a strategy plan of another Rotary district, not our own. Here, the strategic priority is to increase our ability to adapt. And how they're going to do that, they plan to do so by supporting and encouraging change at every level, clubs, committees, district operations, and develop a plan of action to change, and also by promoting district-wide leadership planning and to strengthen clubs for the future. So this is an actual example that I found, again, looking at some of the strategic plans of some districts, Rotary districts actually currently existing. So Rotarians, we are nearing the end of the game. So we've identified the strategic priorities for our clubs, the goals and the objectives that would help us achieve our stated vision for the clubs. We've mapped our strategy. The present and the future leaders have signed on, and we'll use this to plan their club program and agenda for the next 3 years. So like all good processes, now we must put it in place and we must monitor and adjust. So our final phase in our strategic plan development is the monitoring your goal phase. We want to have an ability to track and monitor our goals, and you will need to track your progress towards your annual goals with your strategic planning team. You're going to have a mechanism to suggest changes in terms of changes to the action plans. If you need to do so, you're going to want to have the ability to try a new approach, to allocate more resources to your goals. So you're going to want to set up even before you put the goal in, the plan in place, how often should you measure progress towards your goals? Will it be annual? Will it be biannual? How do you communicate your progress to your club? It's going to be very important as you establish a club that a plan, that we just don't develop the plan and put it on the shelf. It has to be a living document, and we have to keep club members abreast of how we're doing towards the goals that we've set for ourselves as a club, and how and who is going to be the one to approve changes to the action plans and to the annual goals. So we need to review and adjust as we make progress in terms of, as we need to meet our goals. Are we meeting those goals? Are we not meeting those goals? And if we're not meeting those goals, then why? So, fellow Rotarians, we are at the end of the board strategy game, and I'm going to take the opportunity just to do a very quick recap. So our first step was to assemble a strategy planning team. We wanted to conduct a health check and a SWOT analysis. And after conducting our health check and our SWOT analysis, no doubt we left some things in the corner lot that we didn't want to deal with, or we couldn't, but we identified our strategic issues. We articulated our vision and our purpose. And then we kind of hit pay dirt when we developed our strategic objectives that will help us to reach our vision. It felt good reaching the milestone of having a vision, and it felt like how I think most of us feel on payday. But we continue to reap rewards by following a song planning process, feeling more accomplished as we moved along our board. And like how you feel if you win some money in Monopoly. And though admittedly we may have struggled a little bit when we got to the mapping of our strategy, we did it in the end using a balanced scorecard framework. So now we take a break because we're done. We've done the plan, we let it settle in place, and we have to monitor and review and adjust the plan as necessary. This, of course, has led us to a happy and successful club, and we will have to play this game again in 3 to 5 years. I'm going to close my presentation by really congratulating the district and the clubs of 7030 for the work and growth that we've experienced in the last decade. We've had a good decade, I think, as a Rotary District, and our new decade of the 20s opened with quite a zinger. 2020 and now into 2021, but our experience in the last year underscores the need to solidly plan for the next few years. The COVID crisis in some ways have helped us to leap forward, especially with the use of technology in our clubs in the region, but in many ways it has taken us back with the hard economic blows it has struck. And Rotary will be needed now, I think, more than ever. So we really need to be ready to serve, to change lives. And to do so, I think we must all get better at planning. So fellow Rotarians, thank you very much for your attention. I was asked to keep my presentation to about 30 minutes, and I have, which allows us, I think, a great lot of time for some questions. So I'm now going to invite your questions and comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Katrina. I think that you have very creatively set a really good template that I think clubs can easily follow. And I always say that, you know, if you don't know where you're going, any road can take you there. So you have to plan, even if you're going on a trip out of town. If you're going on a travel, you have to plan. So you have to have some map to take you there. And so the usual questions that come up a lot that I've seen is how often do we, you know, review where we are, and if we review at all, because like you said, you know, you have persons, clubs doing plans, and even companies doing plans where it is just sitting on a shelf. We've done a plan, we've ticked the box, and let's move on. But we don't really, we don't really look at how the plan is going, whether we need to make adjustments. So the first question comes from Tanya, who's asking, if a club already has a 3 to 5 year strategic plan, what are suggestions for revision of that plan?
So my suggestion is that we look at the plan. I don't think we should, you know, throw, as we say in the Caribbean, the baby out with the bathwater. I think we need to look at the plan to reaffirm if the information and the goals that we've set for ourselves are still relevant, if the situation has changed, and which will cause us to change our direction and our strategy. So I think we really need to look at our plans frequently enough, not to, you know, change with every high wind or, you know, change with every fad, but that we are making sure that our plans remain relevant for the situation and for, you know, what the club's vision is going forward.
You know, and a plan is never cast in stone at any rate. It's like a budget. It's never cast in stone. All right, Rianne is asking, could there be a fallout or lack of support if the strategy team does not involve a board in enough segments and a larger segment of the club, or a greater portion of the club?
I think so. And I think that was why I emphasized that the composition of the strategy team should be very carefully planned, so that we have, you know, the past wisdom of maybe some of the past leaders, your current leaders, and the future of the club all represented on the strategy team. The strategy team needs to have a mandate from the board, and the president, if the president is not leading the strategy team, certainly members of the board and the president will be on the strategy team. So yes, I think it all has to be done in tandem, and we have to make sure that we have given great thought and you know, consultation in putting together the strategy team. But the strategy team definitely should consult widely to ensure that nobody feels as if their opinion is not necessarily being taken on board, and certainly not board members.
Thank you. I guess it's the veterans and the voice of change that has to be taken into consideration.
Indeed.
Judy is asking, RI has a set guideline for development a strategic plan. Should the club's vision differ from that of RI?
I don't think it necessarily needs to differ radically, but it has to be relevant to your club. So I think you want to make sure there is alignment. It's not necessary that you want to, adopt it wholeheartedly, but you want to make sure that there's alignment and that it is relevant for your club, that your vision is really a vision that you can get behind in terms of what you want to achieve for your club. And I will say to you that in doing my research for today's session, I very much followed Rotary International's strategic planning guide. So what the 4 steps does not actually differ from Rotary International's strategic planning guide that has been set out.
Okay, Lloyd is asking a question, but I think you just answered that question because it's a similar question to Judy. Ranu is asking, should an annual action plan be developed from the strategic plan to ensure that the plan is successful? I believe you touched on that, but I guess you can reinforce it here.
Yeah, I think all too often what we find in Rotary Club, I've often thought, before becoming a president, that a president's year should be 2 years. After becoming president, maybe not. But I honestly feel that there needs to be continuity in terms of planning and execution, so that we shouldn't all be going wildly different directions. Everybody wants to, of course, leave their mark on their club and make their contribution, but it must be done within the framework. So I think, yes, on an annual basis, we are going to refresh the plan, and we're going to have different, maybe slightly different initiatives to try to achieve the goals, but it really should be set in the framework of the overall multi-year plan for your club. So we want to make sure club presidents get their opportunity to leave their signature on the club, but not that it is in such wide variance to what the club in general has agreed is its strategy and its vision and the objectives to get us there.
Yes, and of course it's important because of how the structure of clubs are, where you include all 3 presidents going forward, sitting presidents and the other 2 presidents, if it's a 3-year plan that we're doing. Rian is asking, Reburn is asking, how important is it that the strat plan be provided to the wider members, including new members and even prospective members? You touched on it, but
yeah, it's extremely important. And it's like in any business, you imagine, and I say this, generally in my day-to-day business of dealings, imagine joining an organization and being given a task, and you carrying out your task, and you have no idea how it connects to the overall goal of the organization. I think that is one way to have disengaged employees and disengaged members. I think members need to understand what is the strategy. First, we need to have buy-in. We're all in the same boat, but if we're rowing in different directions, we're not going to get to where we want to get to as an organization. So it's very important for your strat plan to be shared with members and with even prospective members, serious prospective members, as they contemplate joining an organization and being part of, the team to achieve the vision of that organization.
Thank you. Jalim is asking a very interesting question that I often hear. How do we get clubs to monitor and evaluate their plans periodically? Sometimes they only review at the end of the year.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's not a board position, but it should be a position. If we have a team of people identified as our strategic planning team, then at our club forum, that team should be reporting pretty frequently as to where we are with our, on the delivery of the goals and objectives that we set for ourselves, and so that it is something that we have kind of hard-coded in our DNA as part of our reporting. We report on everything else. We report on dues. We report on attendance. We report on. So why not report on a consistent and frequent basis on where we are with the attainment of our goals and objectives.
Yes, thank you for that response. Avery is asking, what is a good number for the strategy team, and how many is too many, or how many is not enough?
Now, it wouldn't surprise you, having been a consultant for 20 years clearly since I was a baby, that I think we shouldn't have large committees, but we want to make it diverse enough that it makes sense. So I would say a good strategy team is probably 5 members on average. You don't want to make it large and unwieldy and we've all sat on those large committees and then it boils down to 5 people out the 10 or 15 working. We really want to have people who can contribute, and even if we have a core team and we have other avenues for people to provide input to the team. But I would say, in my experience, a good number is 3 to 5.
All right, thank you. We don't have any more questions, but I'd just like to let you know, you would have seen scrolling along the very good response from members in terms of your presentation, and I thought it was an excellent presentation. And like I said, I think it's a very good template that I think clubs can use. And to say, as I have the ear of all the members here, is that it's a member's responsibility too to ask if no one is bringing up the review of the strategic plan. Members can ask as well, what is happening with the strategic plan? So thank you, Katrina, and I hand over to PAG Luana.
Thank you, PP Liz and PP Katrina, for a really inspiring and presentation that basically provides the blueprint for clubs to go forward. Now, no club can have an excuse why they don't have a strategic plan. It was clear and very easy to follow, so thank you. Before we get to the vote of thanks, I understand we have a birthday boy in the house, and so I would like to shout out happy birthday to District Governor nominee designate Brian, and just like to play this for him.
It's paused, Luana.
DJ. Yeah, we should unmute everybody and let everybody sing happy birthday.
Well, I figure people wouldn't want to do that because if they're like me and don't have a singing voice, that mightn't end too well. So I just decided to play it safe and YouTube it. But DG Andy Bryan, happy birthday from all of us in District 7030. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the evening. Now for some housekeeping matters before we go into the vote of thanks. Encouraging all clubs to register for the district conference. I see Conference Chair Conrad is here, and I'm sure he would want us to plug the club registration, $500, which with the club registration, individual Rotarians do not have to register. Also, please get your white polos ready, fully branded with the conference logo. Let's all look good for PETS and district conference. Please register for the remaining sessions. The next session will be held on Thursday, March 18th. It will be facilitated by PP Ronald Bertsmith, and the topic is updating your club's constitution and bylaws. So that too will be interesting. Reminder for clubs to submit representatives to sit on the district training committee, and we need to know who your club trainer is. So please send us those emails so we can get started. I'll now hand you over to PAG Balmati to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Luana. Good evening, everyone. All protocols observed. On behalf of our PPET training team, it is my pleasant duty this evening to give the vote of thanks. First of all, we want to thank Katrina for facilitating us for the second time and sharing with us her wealth of knowledge on this very important topic of strategic planning. Katrina has actually already summarized for us her presentation and also very important, effective comments given by Liz. So there's no need for me to do a summary as such. But what I would like to say to Katrina is that I am sure that those of us who have been listening to her attentively this evening are now much better equipped to identify really where we are and as a club and where we want to be. And more importantly, the importance of strategic planning, of actually having a strategic plan. You have given us detailed guidelines of all the elements involved. And I found your illustrations especially were very effective in enhancing your explanations. So thank you so much, Katrina. Your presentations are always so very exciting, so really very enticing us and encouraging us to really become much better than we are at this moment with respect to planning, doing planning properly, not just developing strategic plans, but generally in all that we do within our clubs.
Bal, sorry, you're muted. I think you muted yourself by mistake.
Okay, sorry. So what did you not hear? I also want to thank you, Luana, and your team. I want to thank the communications team led by Sean, our translators, and you, all our attendees, for your participation and your support. Your questions and your comments have further added additional enlightenment to what we have been given this evening by Katrina. It's really, some of us would be an eye-opener with some of the information we have received this evening. And I'm sure we would all be encouraged to go on the website and learn more and you know, to really get in all the details that she has given us, which, you know, we won't all remember. So thank you again. Thank you, everyone. All of you have contributed to the success of this session. And we look forward to seeing you all on Thursday for the next session. Pleasant evening.
Thank you, PAG Bal. DGE Sonia, any closing remarks from you?
Just thank you so much, Katrina. Another stellar presentation. Great points for our Rotarians of this district to take and use in their clubs, in their daily lives. Strategic planning is key to being successful. There is no sense in doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. Fellow Rotarians, that is the sign of madness. Take this opportunity to learn the tools and use them. So I look forward to seeing everybody on Thursday, another session which I know we don't do. Check our constitution and our bylaws regularly. So thanks everybody. Bye-bye. See you then.